Jordan Bennett arrives at Lake Tahoe for a family vacation, only to discover her parents and sister Amber started it a day early without telling her, a deliberate test of her loyalty. Feeling betrayed, Jordan confronts her family's favoritism toward Amber, uncovering a deeper wound. They've planned to disinherit her via a deceptive trust amendment. As tensions escalate, Jordan stands firm, hiring an attorney to protect her rights. With her children's legacy at stake, she faces a pivotal choice: comply with her family's manipulative demands or fight for her truth, hinting at shocking revelations yet to unfold. If Jordan's story of courage and betrayal resonates with you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world and keeps us sharing powerful stories like this. Hit that bell icon for updates and join our community to dive into more gripping tales tomorrow. Thank you. The moment I realized my family had orchestrated everything is etched in my memory, sharp and unyielding. It hit me like a slow-motion crash as I stood in the opulent lobby of the Lake Tahoe resort, my weekend bag slung heavily over my shoulder, the weight of it mirroring the growing dread in my chest. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes shadowed by pity, slid a single-room key across the polished marble counter. "Just one key, Miss Bennett," she said softly, her voice almost apologetic. "Your parents mentioned there would be 4 of you in the suite." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as the crackling of the nearby fireplace filled the silence. I stood there, alone, the grandeur of the lobby feeling like a stage set for a play I hadn't been invited to star in. I'm Jordan Bennett, 34 years old, a divorced mother of 2 incredible kids: Nathan, my thoughtful 8-year-old, and Zoe, my fiercely perceptive 6-year-old. I head the content department at a digital marketing agency in Portland, where I juggle tight deadlines, school pickups, and the chaos of single parenthood with a smile I've perfected to make it all look seamless. My ex-wife Megan moved to Seattle 2 years ago for a tech job, leaving me with primary custody and a life I hadn't planned for, but have fought to master. That afternoon in Tahoe, though, that wasn't about my job or my divorce. It was about something deeper, something primal. My place in the family I was born into, the one I'd spent my life trying to belong to. My voice trembled as I managed to respond, barely audible over the fireplace's warmth. "I'm sorry, did you say my parents have already checked in?" The receptionist nodded, her fingers tapping lightly on her keyboard. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett arrived yesterday evening with your sister's family. They said you'd be joining them today." Yesterday evening. The words echoed in my skull, each syllable a tiny betrayal. I gripped the counter to steady myself, my knuckles whitening. My parents had been adamant that our annual family gathering started today, Friday. They'd stressed it when I requested time off work, rearranged childcare for Nathan and Zoe, and drove 5 grueling hours through winding mountain passes to get here. Yet, they'd arrived a day early with my sister Amber and her kids, leaving me out of the loop, stranded in their absence. Numbly, I took the key, my fingers cold against the metal, and made my way to the elevators. My mind was a storm of questions and half-formed realizations. This wasn't the first time my parents had favored Amber. Her struggles as a single mom, her financial hardships, her need for their support always seemed to trump my existence. For years, I'd rationalized it, telling myself they meant well, that Amber needed them more. But this felt like a calculated move, a deliberate exclusion that cut deeper than any oversight. The suite was a stark confirmation of my fears. It was spacious, luxurious, but already claimed. My parents' belongings were neatly arranged in the master bedroom, Amber's and her kids scattered across the second. My luggage looked pitiful as I set it beside the pull-out couch in the living area, clearly my designated spot, the afterthought of the family. I pulled out my phone and texted my parents. "Just arrived. Where is everyone?" My mother's reply came almost instantly. "Down at the lake with the kids. Join us when you're settled." The casualness of it stung, as if my absence until now was inconsequential. I changed into jeans and a sweater, the motions mechanical, and headed to the lakeshore. From a distance, I saw them. A postcard-perfect family scene that didn't include me. My father knelt in the sand, laughing as he built a castle with Amber's twins, his face lit with a joy I rarely saw directed at me. My mother snapped photos of Amber's oldest son, her pride evident as he skimmed stones across the water. Amber lounged in a beach chair, sunglasses perched on her nose, scrolling through her phone with an air of effortless belonging. They were complete, a unit that didn't need me to function. "There she is," my father called, spotting me first, his wave casual, as if I hadn't just been blindsided. The workaholic finally made it. The nickname meant as a tease landed like a jab. My mother adjusted her sun hat, her smile warm but fleeting. "Jordan, darling, you missed the welcome dinner last night. The salmon was divine." Her words froze me in place, the sand shifting beneath my feet. I felt exposed, raw as the truth settled in. This wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. "You told me the trip started today?" I said, my voice tight, struggling to keep the hurt from spilling over. Amber glanced up from her phone, waving a hand dismissively. "Oh, Mom and Dad decided to come early. We thought it'd be nice to have an extra day. I assume they told you." Her nonchalance was a knife twisting deeper. "They didn't," I replied, each word deliberate. "They specifically told me Friday." My father brushed sand from his hands, his face hardening in that familiar way that signaled he was done with the conversation. "Jordan, don't start making a scene. Does it really matter? You're here now." "It matters to me," I insisted, my throat constricting as I fought to keep my voice steady. "Why would you tell me a different arrival day than everyone else?" My mother sighed, her exasperation theatrical, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Jordan, with your work schedule and the kids, we just thought it'd be easier for you to come on the official start date." Amber was able to be flexible. Flexible. The word burned. I'd moved mountains to be here. Weeks of planning, arranging for my friend Taylor to watch Nathan and Zoe, navigating treacherous roads, all because I believed this was when the family gathering began. I could have come yesterday if they'd told me the truth. Amber rolled her eyes, barely hiding her irritation. "It's not a big deal, Jor. You're always so intense about everything." The dismissal in her tone was so familiar, yet it stung anew. Then my nephew Jake, all of 5 years old, looked up from his sandcastle, his innocent voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Mommy said this is a test to see if Auntie Jordan really wants to be part of the family." The beach went silent. Amber's head snapped toward her son, her eyes sharp with warning. My parents suddenly found their beach chairs fascinating, adjusting them with unnecessary focus. "A test?" I repeated, my voice trembling as I looked between them. "What does that mean?" My father cleared his throat, forcing a smile. "Jake, go play in the water with your siblings." He waited until the boy was out of earshot before turning to me. "Kids say the strangest things. But I wasn't letting this go. Not this time." "No, I want to know what he meant. What kind of test is this?" My mother glanced at Amber, then back to me, her expression softening into something patronizing. "Jordan, you've been so distant since your divorce. Always too busy, always making excuses about work or the kids. We just wanted to see if you'd make the effort to be here, even if it wasn't perfectly convenient." Her words landed like a punch, stealing my breath. "So you deliberately gave me the wrong date," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You started the family vacation without me as some sort of loyalty test." Amber snorted, her sunglasses glinting in the sun. "See, this is exactly why we did it. You're overreacting as usual." Overreacting. The word ignited a fire in me, a surge of anger I'd never allowed myself to fully feel before. "I'm overreacting," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You deliberately excluded me from part of our family vacation, and I'm overreacting for being upset about it?" My father stood, towering over me as he had when I was a child, his presence a reminder of every time I'd been silenced. "Enough, Jordan. This attitude is exactly why we worry about you. Your sister makes time for family. Your sister prioritizes us. Your sister doesn't make everything so difficult." Each word was a blow, echoing a lifetime of comparisons. Amber is easier. Amber is more loving. Amber is more deserving. I'd heard it all before, but this really time, standing in the sand with the sun burning my skin, something inside me shattered, or perhaps finally aligned. "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. "This wasn't a test to see if I wanted to be part of the family. This was you showing me that I never truly was. My mother's face softened into that familiar, condescending look she used when she thought I was being dramatic. Jordan, sweetie, of course you're part of the family. We just wish you acted like it more. But I saw them clearly now. My father with his rigid expectations I could never meet. My mother with her love that always came with strings. Amber basking in her role as the favored child, believing it was her right. I'm going home, I announced, turning to leave. Jordan, my mother called, her voice sharp with disbelief. Don't be ridiculous. You just got here. I paused, looking back at them, their faces a mix of annoyance and expectation. That's the point, isn't it? I just got here because you wanted it that way. You wanted me to feel like an outsider. Well, congratulations. Test completed. As I walked away, my father's voice followed me, dismissive and certain. Let her go. She'll calm down and come back. She always does. But he was wrong, not this time. Back in the suite, I packed with trembling hands, tears threatening but refusing to fall. I'd spent too many years crying over my family's treatment, justifying their actions, convincing myself that if I tried harder, loved better, I'd earn their acceptance. I left a note on the coffee table. Heading home. Enjoy your vacation. Simple, final, no pleas or accusations, just the truth of my departure. The 5-hour drive back to Portland was a blur of mountain roads and rest stops where I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process the weight of what had happened. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and a strange calm settled over me. Taylor, my best friend since college, met me at the door, her face etched with confusion. Jordan, what are you doing back already? Before I could answer, Nathan and Zoe barreled into the entryway, their voices a chorus of joy. Mommy, you're home early. I knelt down, pulling them into my arms, breathing in the familiar scent of their shampoo, the unconditional love they offered so freely. I missed you too much, I said, summoning a smile. I decided I'd rather be here with you. Later, after the kids were asleep, I sat with Taylor in my kitchen, a glass of wine untouched before me as I recounted the day's events. Her eyes widened in disbelief. They did what? They started the vacation without you as some kind of test? I nodded, the numbness still lingering. Apparently, I've never been family enough for them. Taylor reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Jordan, I've known you since college. You've bent over backward for your family for years, rearranged your life, your schedule, your priorities, all to please them. And it's never enough, I whispered, the truth settling heavy in my chest. Because it can't be, Taylor said gently. This isn't about you not doing enough. It's about them needing someone to be less so Amber can be more. Her words cut through the fog, clear and undeniable. All these years, I'd been fighting for a place at a table where there was never a seat for me. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone lit up with texts from my family. My mother, Jordan, stop being childish and come back to the resort. My father, your behavior is embarrassing. Think about the example you're setting for your kids. Amber, way to ruin the vacation, drama queen. I turned off my phone without responding. For the first time, I wasn't going to engage, explain, or beg for understanding. I was done. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I made pancakes with Nathan and Zoe, laughing as they drowned their plates in syrup, creating sticky masterpieces. We spent the day at the park, then indulged in ice cream and movie marathons until they fell asleep on the couch. It was simple, perfect, real. A family built on love without conditions or tests. On Sunday, my phone buzzed with calls from my parents, alternating as if tag-teaming their efforts. I let them go to voicemail, not ready to face their voices. But on Monday, as I dropped the kids at school and headed to work, I listened to their messages, curious about what they'd say after time to reflect. My mother's voice was tight with controlled anger. Jordan, this behavior is unacceptable. Your father and I expect better from you. Call us immediately. My father, stern and unyielding. Jordan, enough is enough. You're disappointing the entire family with this stunt. Amber's kids were looking forward to spending time with their aunt. Not a hint of apology, just blame and guilt, their usual weapons. I deleted the messages and walked into my office, head high, knowing I'd never again let myself be tested by those who claimed to love me. For 2 weeks, a heavy silence settled between me and my family, the kind that carries its own weight. I moved through my routine, client meetings, Nathan's science project, braiding Zoe's hair, meal prepping, but something had shifted. I kept waiting for the guilt, the ache to fix things, to be forgiven. It never came. Instead, I felt relief, a lightness I hadn't known was possible. "You seem different," Taylor said one evening as we watched our kids play in my backyard. Nathan and her son building a fort while Zoe directed with 6-year-old authority. "Different how?" I asked, though I knew. "Lighter," she said, "like you set down something heavy you've been carrying for years." I sipped my iced tea, her words resonating. "I think I did. I think I finally stopped trying to earn my place in my own family." My phone buzzed, my mother's name flashing for the third time that day. I ignored it. "Aren't you going to answer?" Taylor asked. "No," I said, simply, the ease of it surprising me. "The old Jordan is retired. She worked too hard for too little return." That evening, I reviewed the muted family group chat. The messages had evolved from annoyance to anger to calculated manipulation. My mother's guilt trips, my father's health scare threats, Amber's accusations. The pattern was clear now, and I closed the chat without responding. The next morning, as I rushed the kids through breakfast, my doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m., unusual for a weekday. "I've got it," Nathan called, racing to the door before I could stop him. "Grandma!" His excited voice sent a jolt through me. I rounded the corner to find my mother in my entryway, impeccably dressed, her serene expression masking the martyr she played so well. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral, "this is a surprise." "Clearly," she replied, hugging Nathan. "I wouldn't have had to surprise you if you'd answered your phone." Zoe slipped her hand into mine, her quiet observation a contrast to Nathan's enthusiasm. "Grandma's here," she said, sensing the tension. "I see that, sweetheart," I replied, squeezing her hand. "Why don't you and Nathan finish breakfast? You still need to brush your teeth." Nathan hesitated, sensing the shift. "But Grandma just got here." My mother seized the moment. "I could take them to school, Jordan. Give you a break. We could catch up afterward." It was a classic move, using my kids as leverage, but I wasn't the same Jordan anymore. I met her gaze, steady and unyielding, ready to face whatever came next. The morning air was crisp as I stood in my doorway, facing my mother. Her presence felt like an ambush, her carefully curated smile a weapon she wielded with precision. She was here, she said, to see her grandchildren. But the undertone was clear. She was positioning herself as the benevolent grandmother, while casting me as the heartless mother who might rob Nathan and Zoe of her love. My chest tightened with a familiar mix of frustration and guilt, emotions she'd always known how to stir. "That's not necessary," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "It's a school day, Mom. We have our routine." Nathan's small voice piped up. "But Mommy!" His wide eyes flickered between us, sensing the tension but not understanding it. My heart ached for him, caught in this unspoken family war. "Nathan," I said, softening my tone but keeping it firm, "go finish your breakfast, please. Grandma and I need to talk." As he shuffled back to the kitchen with Zoe, I turned to my mother, the weight of years of unspoken truths pressing against my ribs. "Why are you really here, Mom?" She sighed, adjusting her purse strap with a practiced flourish, a signal she was about to deliver a speech she'd rehearsed in the mirror. "Jordan, this has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Your father and I know you were upset about the Tahoe trip, but vanishing for 2 weeks and ignoring our calls? That's excessive." Her words landed like a slap, each one dripping with judgment. Excessive. The word burned in my mouth as I repeated it, tasting its unfairness. "Is that what you think this is? Me being excessive?" She didn't miss a beat. "What else would you call it? You abandoned our family vacation without explanation, left your sister and her kids traumatized, and now you're giving us the silent treatment. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of this." Her accusation was a masterclass in deflection, and for a moment, I felt the old urge to apologize, to smooth things over. But I was done carrying their burdens. Dad's blood pressure isn't my responsibility, I said, my voice low but unyielding, and I didn't abandon anyone. I was the one excluded, deliberately, and then gaslighted when I called it out. Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face before she masked it with disdain. Gaslighted? Where do you pick up these buzzwords? Those self-help books you're always buried in? The dismissal stung, but it also fueled my resolve. Does it matter where I learned the term? The point is, you, Dick, and Amber set me up. You gave me the wrong date for Tahoe on purpose, as some kind of test of my loyalty to the family. And when I reacted like any normal person would to being manipulated, you all turned it around and attacked me. She waved a hand as if my words were pesky flies to be swatted away. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a simple miscommunication. Miscommunication? The lie was so blatant it almost made me laugh. It wasn't a miscommunication, I said, my voice steady now. Amber's son told me it was a test. His exact words. For a split second, her composure faltered, a crack in her polished facade. But she recovered quickly. Children exaggerate, Jordan. You know that. Do they? I countered, stepping closer. Or do they sometimes say the truths adults are too cowardly to admit? Silence hung between us, heavy and charged, a decades-old standoff finally surfacing. She broke it first, her voice softer now, conciliatory. Look, I didn't come here to argue. I came to talk about the lake house. The abrupt shift threw me off balance. The lake house, a modest cabin on the Oregon coast, built by my grandfather and passed to my father, was a sacred space in our family. Its weathered walls held my happiest childhood memories. Summers spent chasing waves, building sandcastles, feeling free in a way I rarely did at home. What about it? I asked, wary. Your father and I are considering selling it. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. Selling the lake house? My father had always sworn he'd never let it go, calling it his legacy. Why? I pressed, searching her face for answers. She fiddled with her watch, avoiding my gaze. Times change. We're getting older, and the upkeep is too much. Plus, the money would help with retirement. The explanation felt flimsy, like a script she hadn't fully memorized. My parents weren't struggling financially. The lake house's sale wouldn't change their lifestyle. There's more to this, isn't there, Duane? I said, my voice sharp. Her lips thin, a telltale sign I'd hit a nerve. We need your signature, she admitted. The property's in a family trust. And there it was, the real reason for her visit. Not concern for me or my kids, not an olive branch to mend our fractured relationship, but a cold, practical need for my cooperation. A strange calm settled over me, as if I were watching this scene unfold from outside my body. I see, I said, my tone neutral. When do you need this signature? She relaxed, misreading my calmness as compliance. As soon as possible. We have interested buyers and the market's favorable. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 weeks of silence after their Tahoe stunt, but the moment they needed something, she showed up at my door, acting as if nothing had happened. I'll need to review the documents first, I said, and I want to speak with the family lawyer directly. Her face clouded. That's not necessary. It's a straightforward sale. Nevertheless, I said, my voice firm, that's my condition. If you want my signature, I'll review everything properly. Jordan, this attitude, she began, but I cut her off, my tone gentle but unyielding. Mom, I need to get the kids to school. If you want to leave the paperwork, I'll look it over this weekend. The shift in power was subtle but seismic. For the first time, I was setting the terms, and she was the one who needed me. She hesitated, then pulled a manila envelope from her purse. The documents are in here. Your father expects to hear from you by Monday. I took the envelope without a word. I'll walk you out. I need to load the kids in the car. As I called Nathan and Zoe to grab their backpacks, she made one last play. Your father and I thought you could come to dinner this Sunday. Bring the kids. We could discuss the lake house and other things. What other things? I asked, my guard up. She waved vaguely. Family matters, things we should talk about in person. The old Jordan would have jumped at the invitation, desperate for any chance to belong. But the woman standing in her entryway, clutching that envelope, was different. I can't this Sunday, I said. The kids have activities, and I have work to finish. Work on a Sunday? Her disapproval was palpable, a familiar jab at my choices as a single mother. Yes, I said, unflinching. Work on a Sunday. That's how I keep a roof over my kids' heads. She flinched, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction at her discomfort. Call when you've reviewed the papers, she said, turning to leave. After dropping Nathan and Zoe at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot, the envelope on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. Something about her story didn't add up. My parents' attachment to the lake house ran deep. Selling it felt out of character. On impulse, I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Winters, our family lawyer. In the past, all legal matters went through my father, who filtered information to the rest of us. But I was done with secondhand truths. Bennett Legal Matters, Mr. Winters' office, his assistant answered. This is Jordan Bennett. I'd like to speak with Mr. Winters about the sale of the family lake house. A pause. One moment, please. Minutes later, Mr. Winters came on the line, his voice warm but surprised. Jordan, this is unexpected. How can I help? My mother just gave me paperwork to sign for the lake house sale, I said. I wanted to discuss it with you directly. Another pause, longer this time. I'm afraid I'm not aware of any sale proceedings for the Bennett Lake property. My stomach twisted. You're not? Mom said there are buyers and they need my signature ASAP. This is the first I'm hearing of it, he said, confusion creeping into his tone. The last documentation I filed was the updated family trust last year, naming you and Amber as equal beneficiaries. No sale, no paperwork through this office. And as your family's counsel for 30 years, I'd expect to be involved. I thanked him and hung up, staring at the envelope with growing suspicion. What was my mother trying to get me to sign? Back at my office, I locked the door and opened the envelope. Inside wasn't a real estate contract, but a document titled Amendment to Bennett Family Trust. As I scanned the legal text, my breath caught. This wasn't about selling the lake house. It was about removing me as a beneficiary and transferring my share to Amber. The betrayal was staggering, its brilliance almost admirable. They'd crafted a lie about selling the property, knowing I might agree to a sale, to hide their true goal, cutting me out of my inheritance. The document was dense with jargon, but its intent was clear. I'd be relinquishing all claims to the lake house in exchange for financial support already provided. What support? I'd never taken a dime from them. Since my divorce, I'd prided myself on my independence. Then it hit me. This wasn't about money I'd received. It was about money they'd given Amber. Her new car, the loan for her house, the vacations, her kids' private school tuition. It all added up. They'd been funneling assets to her for years, assets that should have been split equally. Now they wanted me to sign away my share to make it official. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm washing over me. This wasn't just favoritism, it was a calculated effort to disinherit me. The Tahoe test suddenly made sense. They'd been building a case, painting me as distant and difficult to justify cutting me out. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Your mother said she dropped off the paperwork. When can we expect your signature? I set the phone down and turned to my computer, researching trust law and beneficiary rights. By evening, I had a plan. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my children's heritage. The lake house wasn't just property. It was where Nathan learned to swim, where Zoe collected shells, a tangible link to their family history. At home, Nathan asked hopefully, "Can we have pizza for dinner?" "Sure," I said, smiling at his delight. The old Jordan would have said no, worried about my mother's judgment. The new Jordan didn't care. "With stuffed crust?" Zoe chimed in, sensing a rare opportunity. "Absolutely," I said, laughing. As we ate, my phone rang, my father. I turned it face down, refusing to let him disrupt this moment. Later, after the kids were in bed, I sat with a glass of wine, the trust amendment spread before me. My father had left a voicemail, his voice unsteady. "Jordan, call me back. There may have been a misunderstanding about the paperwork." A misunderstanding. That's what they called it now that I'd likely uncovered their deception. I typed a message to both parents. "I've reviewed the documents thoroughly. I understand exactly what you're asking me to sign and why. I'll be consulting my own attorney before taking any action. Please direct all future communication through legal channels. My finger hovered over send. This would change everything, formalizing the rift that began at Tahoe. There'd be no going back. But I thought of the lake house, of my children, of the years I'd spent accepting less. I pressed send. My phone lit up with calls. Mom, Dad, Mom again. I silenced each one, a quiet power surging through me. I was done being manipulated. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and a barrage of texts. Mom, Jordan, you're blowing this out of proportion. We need to talk as a family. Dad, this is unnecessary. Lawyers will only complicate things. Amber, WTF Jordan? Mom's in tears because of you again. I scrolled through them, sipping coffee, untouched by the guilt they were trying to weaponize. As I helped Zoe tie her shoes, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered cautiously. Jordan, it's Lucas. Lucas Mitchell. My heart skipped. Lucas, a longtime family friend, was someone I'd always respected for his fairness. Your father called me last night, upset about a family dispute. He asked me to mediate. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. Why face me himself when he can send reinforcements? That sounds like Richard, Lucas said dryly. I'm not taking sides, but I thought you might want a neutral ear. I hesitated, wary of his ties to my father, but his sincerity made me reconsider. We agreed to meet for lunch at Riverside Bakery. His parting words lingered. I'm glad you're standing your ground. It's been a long time coming. Had others seen the unfairness I was only now acknowledging? At the cafe, Lucas greeted me warmly. Over sandwiches, he got to the point. Your father says you're threatening legal action over the lake house. I slid a copy of the trust amendment across the table. See for yourself. They tried to trick me into signing away my inheritance. Lucas's eyebrows shot up as he read, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. This is significantly different from Richard's story. I'm not surprised, I said, my voice steady. He called it a misunderstanding. Lucas shook his head, setting the document down. This is no misunderstanding, Jordan. This is deliberate. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. The weight of my family's betrayal didn't vanish, but sharing it with someone who understood made it bearable. As we parted, I felt a resolve solidify within me. I wasn't just fighting for the lake house. I was fighting for my dignity, my children's future, and the truth I'd spent a lifetime burying. Whatever came next, I was ready. As Lucas flipped through the pages of the trust amendment, his brow furrowed deeper with each passing moment, a storm of unease brewing in his usually calm demeanor. The words on the paper seemed to clash violently with the reality he thought he knew. This isn't remotely what Richard described, he murmured, his voice heavy with disbelief. He lifted his gaze to meet mine, his eyes clouded with genuine confusion, searching for answers I wasn't sure I could fully articulate. Why would they do this? Richard's always been so proud of that lake house, of keeping it in the family. The weight of his question hung in the air, and I felt a pang of bitterness twist in my chest. In the family, yes, I said softly, but not my branch of it. I took a deep breath and began to unravel the tangled history of my family's dynamics. I told him about the years of favoritism, how my sister Amber always seemed to bask in the glow of my parents' affection while I scrambled for scraps of their approval. I recounted the so-called Tahoe test, a cryptic challenge my father had devised to prove my worthiness for the family legacy, only for it to feel like a rigged game I was never meant to win. And then there was the surprise visit from my mother, cloaked in false pretenses, her warm smile hiding the sharp edges of a calculated plan. Lucas listened with rapt attention, his untouched lunch growing cold on the plate before him. His silence wasn't judgmental. It was the kind of quiet that comes from someone trying to reconcile decades of friendship with a truth they'd never suspected. When I finished, Lucas removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose, as if trying to physically press away the discomfort of what he'd just heard. I've known your parents for 30 years, he said slowly, his voice tinged with a mix of shock and sorrow. Richard can be stubborn, traditional to a fault, but this level of manipulation, I never would have imagined it. His words mirrored the ache in my own heart. Neither did I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. For years, I clung to the hope that my parents' actions were unintentional, that their uneven love was a misunderstanding I could fix if I just tried harder. But the document in Lucas's hands was undeniable proof that hope had been naive. He gestured toward the papers, his expression hardening. Have you shown this to an attorney yet? I nodded, mentioning the consultation I had scheduled for the next day. Good, he said firmly, tapping the document with a finger. Because this is legally dubious, to put it mildly. The language here implying that Amber's financial support somehow offsets your legitimate inheritance rights creates a false equivalency. It's manipulative, and no reputable lawyer would have drafted something this sloppy. His validation was like a lifeline, pulling me out of the murky waters of self-doubt. I'd spent days wondering if I was blowing things out of proportion, if my anger was unjustified. That's what I thought, man, I said, my voice steadier now. But I wasn't sure if I was overreacting. Lucas shook his head, his eyes kind but resolute. You're not. If anything, you've been remarkably composed given the betrayal you're facing. As we finished our lunch, the conversation shifted to practical matters. Lucas offered advice on what to expect from the legal consultation, how to navigate communication with my parents without letting their tactics pull me back into their orbit. He even suggested ways to shield my children, Nathan and Zoe, from the toxic undercurrents of the family tension. His concern for them touched me deeply. He understood that this wasn't just about me, but about breaking a cycle for the next generation. As we prepared to leave the cafe, Lucas hesitated, his hand resting on the edge of the table, as if anchoring himself for what he was about to say. Jordan, he began, his voice softer now. I've been friends with your father since our college days. I've watched you grow up, build a life, raise your own children, and I've also seen how differently he treats you and Amber. I swallowed hard, caught off guard by his candor. Lucas wasn't one for emotional displays, and his directness felt like a rare gift. What I've never understood, he continued, his brow creasing with frustration, is why Richard doesn't see what's right in front of him. You're the one who embodies everything he claims to value: hard work, independence, integrity. And yet, he shook his head, a mix of sadness and disbelief in his eyes. For what it's worth, I think he's making the biggest mistake of his life by pushing you away like this. His words hit me like a web, stirring emotions I hadn't expected to feel in that moment. Thank you, I managed, my voice thick with gratitude and something close to grief. Before we parted, Lucas reached into his pocket and handed me a business card. This is the name of an excellent trust attorney, he said. If you don't click with the one you're meeting tomorrow, give her a call. She helped my daughter through a messy situation with her stepfather's estate. Then, in a gesture that surprised me, he pulled me into a brief hug. Stand your ground, Jordan, he said, his voice firm but warm. Some battles are worth fighting, especially when they're with family. As I walked back to my office, the city bustling around me, I felt a strange blend of sorrow and determination settling in my chest. Lucas's words had confirmed what I'd been grappling with. There was no going back. The relationship I'd once had with my parents and Amber was fractured beyond repair. Not just by this latest deception, but by a lifetime of slights and unequal treatment. But for the first time, I faced that truth without the familiar weight of guilt or self-doubt. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. Later that day, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Lucas says he spoke with you. I hope he helped you see reason. Your mother and I are waiting for your call. The message was so quintessentially him, confident, dismissive, assuming I'd fall back into line. I slipped the phone into my pocket without replying. Lucas had indeed helped me see, but not in the way my father intended. That evening, as I helped Nathan with his math homework and listened to Zoe's halting but earnest reading, a quiet realization took root. Breaking free from my family's toxic patterns wasn't just about reclaiming my own dignity. It was about showing my children a different way, teaching them that love doesn't come with strings, that they're worthy of respect without having to earn it, that their boundaries are sacred. Whatever happened with the lake house or the trust, I'd already won the most important fight. I'd finally seen my own worth, and no one could take that from me. The next morning, I sat in the office of attorney Catherine Redis, watching as she methodically reviewed the trust amendment my parents had tried to pass off as routine. Her office was exactly what I'd pictured, professional yet warm, with neatly framed degrees and family photos lending an air of quiet competence. When she finally set the document down and removed her reading glasses, her expression was one of measured concern. "Well," she said, her tone calm but pointed, "this is quite something." I managed a wry smile, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. That's one way to put it. Despite the resolve I'd felt after meeting Lucas, being here still felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into someone else's life, a family drama that couldn't possibly be mine. "Let me be frank, Miss Bennett," Catherine said, her gaze steady but kind. "This amendment seems crafted to sidestep standard inheritance protocols by framing Amber's financial support as an advance against your share of the trust. Had you signed this without legal review, you'd have effectively relinquished not only your claim to the lake house, but potentially other family assets as well." Her words confirmed my suspicions, but hearing them from a professional made the betrayal sting anew. "That's what I thought," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "What's particularly troubling," she continued, "is the deliberate misrepresentation. Your mother presented this as a property sale, but the document has nothing to do with selling the lake house. That suggests intentional deception, not a simple oversight." She leaned forward slightly, her expression softening. "Ms. Bennett, may I ask what your goal is here? What outcome are you hoping for?" The question caught me off guard. In the whirlwind of hurt and discovery, I'd been so focused on not signing the document that I hadn't fully considered what I wanted beyond that. "I want to protect what's rightfully mine and my children's," I said after a pause, my voice growing steadier. "The lake house has been in our family for generations. Nathan and Zoe have memories there. Summers swimming, bonfires, fishing with their cousins. They deserve their share of that legacy." I hesitated, then added, "But it's more than just the property. I want to stop letting my parents and Amber manipulate me. I've spent my life chasing their approval, but after this, I'm not sure that's even possible anymore." Catherine nodded, jotting a note on her legal pad. "Sometimes these situations force us to separate what we've always wanted from what's actually realistic. It's painful, but it can also bring clarity." Her words resonated deeply, articulating a truth I'd only begun to grasp. "That's it, exactly," I said, relief washing over me at being understood. "I've spent so long trying to earn their love, their fairness, but maybe it's time to accept that they're not capable of giving it." Catherine's expression was one of quiet approval. "That's a healthy perspective. Now, let's discuss your options." For the next hour, we mapped out potential paths forward, refusing to sign the amendment outright, negotiating new trust terms, or pursuing legal action for attempted fraud. Each option carried risks and benefits, and by the end of our meeting, I felt grounded in a way I hadn't in weeks. "I'll draft a formal response letter," Catherine said as we wrapped up. "It'll assert your rights as a beneficiary, reject the amendment, and direct all future trust-related communication to my office. Sound good?" I nodded, a weight lifting from my shoulders. Perfect. For the first time since the Tahoe trip, I wasn't facing my family's schemes alone. As I left her office and headed to my car, my phone buzzed with a notification. Amber had posted in our family group chat, which I'd been avoiding for days. "Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary dinner this weekend. Everyone's attendance is mandatory. Yes, that means you, Jordan. No more drama. This is about Mom and Dad, not your issues." The old me would have felt a familiar pang of guilt, would have started rearranging my schedule to complaining. But the new me saw the message for what it was, another attempt to pull me back into the fold, to make me play the role of the dutiful daughter. I took a screenshot, emailed it to Catherine with a brief note, "Latest attempt at contact, please advise," and muted the chat again. Back at my office, I'd barely settled at my desk when my phone rang. Amber's name flashed on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I answered, setting it to speaker as I continued organizing files for a client meeting. "So you'll answer for me, but not Mom and Dad," she snapped, her tone sharp and accusatory. Hello to you too, Amber, I said evenly, refusing to match her energy. Cut the pleasantries. Did you see my message about the anniversary dinner? I kept sorting papers, my voice deliberately calm. I saw it, and, she pressed, are you coming or are you still throwing your childish tantrum? I set down my pen, giving the phone my full attention. I'm not having this conversation with you, Amber. She let out an exasperated huff. Seriously, Jordan, it's their 40th anniversary. 40 years of marriage. Do you have any idea how selfish you look right now? The word selfish sparked a flare of anger in my chest. Selfish? I repeated, my voice low but firm. That's rich, coming from someone who helped our parents try to trick me out of my inheritance. A pause followed, then a forced confusion. What are you talking about? The trust amendment, Amber, I said, my patience thinning. The one Mom lied about, saying it was about selling the lake house when it was really about transferring my share to you. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her confidence had waned. You're twisting things. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I countered. I've had an attorney review it. An attorney? She gasped, genuinely shocked. You got a lawyer involved in a family matter? God, Jordan, that's so extreme. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What's extreme is trying to defraud your own sister, then calling her selfish for standing up for herself. Amber's voice faltered. Nobody was defrauding anyone. It was just balancing things. Mom and Dad have helped me financially over the years, and this was a way to make it fair. Fair? I echoed, anger rising in my throat. There's nothing fair about secretly plotting to cut me out of the trust, then staging a fake crisis to trick me into signing away my rights. And you know what's truly sad, Amber? I never once resented the help they gave you. I've supported myself and my kids without asking for a dime. Yet somehow I'm the selfish one for refusing to be lied to and manipulated. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with decades of unspoken grievances. Finally, as Amber said, her voice subdued, the anniversary dinner is at 7 on Saturday at Westlake Grill, private room in the back. I won't be there, I said firmly. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it isn't. Send them my best, but I'm not attending. I ended the call, my hand trembling slightly as I set the phone down. Confronting Amber felt like shattering a lifelong illusion. I'd always tiptoed around her status as the golden child, afraid of seeming envious or stirring conflict. But now I was done swallowing my truth to keep the peace. My desk phone rang and Emily's voice came through. Jordan, your father's on line 1. He says it's urgent. I closed my eyes briefly, steeling myself. Tell him I'm in a meeting and we'll call back later. He's quite insistent, she said, surprised. Emily, I said gently, I'm not available unless it's an emergency involving someone's health or safety. Otherwise, I'll contact him when I'm ready. She hesitated, then agreed, clearly unaccustomed to me setting such boundaries. An email from Catherine pinged my inbox later that day, advising me to document all contact attempts and reinforcing that I had no obligation to attend the dinner. Her words bolstered my resolve. This wasn't about being vindictive. It was about protecting myself after a profound betrayal. The rest of my workday blurred with a client meeting and campaign planning, a welcome escape from the family turmoil. By the time I picked up Nathan and Zoe from after-school care, I'd almost managed to compartmentalize the drama. But children have a way of pulling you back to reality. Mommy, can we have ice cream after dinner? Zoe asked hopefully as we drove home. Not tonight, sweetie, I said. It's a school night. Nathan piped up from the back. Grandma always gives us ice cream when we go to her house, even on school nights. The mention of my mother sent a fresh wave of grief through me. My kids loved their grandparents, unaware of the rift growing between us. I know Grandma does things differently, I said carefully, but in our house, ice cream's for weekends. Nathan's innocent voice followed. When are we going to see Grandma and Grandpa again? Zoe, ever perceptive, added quietly, is it because you're mad at them? I met her eyes in the rearview mirror, her small face searching mine. What makes you think I'm mad? She shrugged. You get a funny face when they call, and you don't answer anymore. Her observation pierced me, a reminder of how much children see. I pulled into the driveway and turned to face them. Mommy and Grandma and Grandpa are having a disagreement right now, I said gently. Sometimes adults need space to figure things out. Nathan tilted his head. Like a timeout? I smiled despite the ache in my chest. Kind of, yeah. Zoe's eyes narrowed. Are they in trouble for being mean? I sighed, choosing honesty in simple terms. It's complicated, sweetie, but you don't need to worry. I promise. That night, after the kids were in bed, I found an email from my mother. Jordan, Amber says you're refusing to attend our 40th anniversary dinner. I can't express how deeply this wounds me. 40 years of marriage is a milestone, and your absence would be felt by all. Whatever issues you think we have, surely you can't set them aside for one evening to honor us. We raised you better than this. Your father is devastated, though he won't show it. His blood pressure has been troubling since this lake house misunderstanding began. Please reconsider, if only for family peace. Love. Mom. The email was textbook her, guilt-laden, subtly critical, with a health scare thrown in for leverage. I forwarded it to Catherine, then closed my laptop, letting the quiet of the house wrap around me. The old Jordan might have caved, but the new me saw the manipulation for what it was. I wasn't fighting just for myself anymore. I was fighting for Nathan, for Zoe, for a future where love didn't demand my silence. And that fight was just beginning. The weight of my parents' 40th anniversary dinner hung over me like a storm cloud, heavy with unspoken expectations in years of tangled family dynamics. Their latest email, cloaked in the guise of family unity, was another calculated move to pull me back into their orbit, to bend me to their will as I always had. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to fire off a sharp reply, but I stopped myself. No. This was precisely why I'd brought Catherine Reyes, my attorney, into the picture. With a deep breath, I forwarded the email to her, adding a quick note. Another attempt at contact, this time dripping with manipulation. I'm not responding. The act felt like a small rebellion, a refusal to play the role of the compliant daughter any longer. As I waited for Nathan and Zoe to finish their baths, their laughter echoing faintly from the bathroom, I scrolled through my phone contacts and landed on Taylor's name. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm but laced with the cheerful chaos of her own kids in the background. Hey, what's up? She asked, her tone instantly grounding me. My parents' big 40th anniversary dinner is this Saturday, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I'm not going, and I need someone to tell me I'm not a horrible person for it. Taylor didn't miss a beat. You're not a horrible person, Jordan. After that stunt they pulled with the Trust Us document, they're lucky you're even speaking to them. Her words were a lifeline, unraveling the knot of guilt that had tightened in my chest. She'd always had a way of cutting through the noise, of seeing the truth I sometimes doubted myself. Thanks, I said, exhaling. I know you're right, but it's hard to shake a lifetime of being conditioned to put their feelings first. I get it, she said, her voice softening. Want me to swing by after the kids are in bed? We could crack open a bottle of wine and hash it out. The offer was tempting, a flicker of warmth in the cold fog of family drama. I'd love that, I admitted, but I'm drowning in work tonight. Rain check? Absolutely, Taylor said firmly. And Jordan, stay strong, you're doing the right thing. After tucking Nathan and Zoe into bed, their small faces peaceful in the glow of their nightlights, I settled at the kitchen table with my laptop. The hum of the house felt like a fragile shield against the outside world. I toggled between work projects and research on family trusts, my mind racing with questions about legal protections and inheritance rights. Around 11 p.m., just as I was about to call it a night, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas Mitchell, a family friend who'd been dragged into this mess. Jordan, hope I'm not texting too late. Wanted to give you a heads up that Richard called me again today. Very agitated about your refusal to attend the anniversary dinner. He asked me to talk some sense into you. I declined, but thought you should know they're still trying to pressure you through multiple channels. Stay firm. Lucas, I stared at the screen, a mix of gratitude and unease swirling in my gut. Lucas's loyalty was a quiet comfort, but my father's persistence felt like a tightening noose. The anniversary dinner wasn't just a celebration. It was a carefully orchestrated trap designed to corner me in front of extended family, to wield social pressure like a weapon to force a reconciliation on their terms. I typed a quick reply. Thanks for letting me know, Lucas, and for staying out of it. I really appreciate your support. His response came almost immediately. You're doing what you need to do. Wish I'd been brave enough to stand up to my own family years ago. The next morning, I woke to an email from Catherine Reyes. Her response to my parents was a masterpiece of precision and professionalism, a polite but unyielding fortress of words. She began with a brief nod to their 40 years of marriage, a milestone worthy of celebration, before pivoting to the heart of the matter. My absolute rejection of their proposed trust amendment and a clear directive that all future communication about family assets go through her office. The letter closed with a measured but pointed statement. Ms. Bennett values her relationship with her parents in hopes for an amicable resolution. However, the attempt to alter her inheritance rights through deceptive means has necessitated this formal response. She remains open to fair and transparent discussions conducted through appropriate legal channels. Reading it, I felt a surge of vindication, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For once, I wasn't apologizing or smoothing things over. I wasn't prioritizing their feelings over my own very real grievances. I approved the letter immediately, imagining my parents' faces as they read it, their carefully laid plans unraveling. The rest of the week was a whirlwind of distractions. Client deadlines, Nathan's soccer game, helping Zoe with her science diorama. I dodged most of my parents' increasingly frequent calls, and when I did pick up, I kept it short, redirecting any mention of the trust or the dinner with a calm but firm, I've made my position clear. I'm not discussing it further. By Friday, the pressure had escalated to a fever pitch. My mother's voicemails were tearful pleas, her voice trembling as she spoke of a broken heart. My father's texts were terse, invoking family duty and obligation. Amber, my sister, was a storm of her own, alternating between fury, calling me selfish and ungrateful, and desperate entreaties to reconsider for mom and dad's sake. Even distant relatives joined the fray, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, an aunt from across the country, my father's brother, who I saw maybe once a decade. Their coordinated effort was almost impressive, a sprawling net cast to drag me back into line. That night, alone in my kitchen after deflecting a dozen appeals, doubt crept in like a thief. Was I being too harsh? Could I go to the dinner, hold my ground on the trust, and still honor their milestone? I scrolled through my phone, rereading the messages that had brought me to this point. The deliberate exclusion from the Tahoe trip, framed as a test of my loyalty. The attempt to trick me into signing away my inheritance. Their refusal to admit any wrongdoing. No, attending the dinner wouldn't be a gesture of grace. It would be surrender. It would tell them their tactics worked, that enough pressure could always break me. That wasn't the lesson I wanted Nathan and Zoe to learn. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop, deciding to write my parents an email, the first direct communication I'd initiated since uncovering their deception. Mom and Dad, I began, I want to congratulate you on 40 years of marriage. It's a remarkable milestone, one most couples can only dream of. But I won't be at the dinner tomorrow. The reason should be clear. Trust has been shattered in a way that can't be glossed over with a family gathering. Pretending everything is fine in front of relatives would be dishonest, to myself and to everyone there. I've reviewed your certified letter with my attorney, and I hope we can one day find a path forward that respects all family members equally. But that requires honesty about what's happened and a real willingness to change the patterns that led us here. For now, please respect my need for space as I process the past few weeks. Jordan, I read it twice, ensuring it struck the balance I wanted. Firm but not cruel, clear but not accusatory. Then I hit send before I could overthink it. The response was almost instant, not from my parents, but from Amber. Jordan, you can't be serious. Do you have any idea how much work I've put into this dinner? The reservations, the decorations, the surprise video from their friends. Mom is a wreck, and Dad's so angry he can barely speak. All because you're too stubborn to set aside your issues for one night. This isn't about some stupid paperwork anymore. You're being selfish and petty, ruining something important. I guess that's just who you are now. Her words stung, but what struck me harder was the absence of any mention of the trust, the lies, or their role in this mess. To Amber and likely my parents, I was the problem, my reaction the issue, not their actions. The realization was a heavy weight, but also a strange kind of freedom. They weren't going to change. They wouldn't suddenly see my side or own their mistakes. This was who they were, and no amount of bending over backward would turn them into the fair, supportive parents I'd spent my life chasing. I closed my laptop without replying and went to bed, sleeping more deeply than I had in weeks. Saturday morning was bright and crisp, the kind of day that begged for new beginnings. As I whipped up pancakes for Nathan and Zoe, their chatter filled the kitchen with a warmth that felt like a shield against the world. "What are we doing today?" Nathan asked, syrup dripping from his fork. "How about a hike in Forest Park?" I suggested. "The weather's perfect." "Can we have a picnic?" Zoe's eyes lit up, her enthusiasm infectious. "Absolutely," I said, grinning. "We'll pack a feast." As we gathered supplies, the doorbell rang, and my stomach twisted. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. My father stood on the porch dressed in a crisp shirt and tie, his face a storm of anger and discomfort. He'd clearly come from some pre-anniversary event, his presence a deliberate escalation. "Dad," I said, not stepping aside to invite him in. "This is unexpected." "It shouldn't be, Daddy," he said gruffly. When my daughter refuses to attend her parents' anniversary celebration, I think a personal visit is warranted. Before I could respond, Nathan's voice rang out. "Grandpa!" He darted to the door and my father's expression softened as he knelt to hug him. "Hey, sport, how's my favorite soccer player?" "I scored 2 goals last game," Nathan beamed. "That's my boy." Zoe approached more cautiously, hanging back. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, offering a small smile. He opened his arms and she stepped into the hug, her hesitation mirroring my own. Watching them, my heart ached. My father loved his grandchildren, and they adored him, but that love was tangled in the same manipulative patterns that had shaped my life. "Kids," I said gently, "Grandpa and I need to talk. Go finish packing the picnic bags. Make sure we have enough water." Once they were out of earshot, I turned to my father. "You shouldn't have come unannounced." "Wouldn't have had to if you'd answer your phone," he shot back, stepping into the house without waiting for an invitation. "Your mother's heartbroken, Jordan." "I'm sorry she's upset," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I meant what I said in my email. I can't pretend everything's fine when it isn't." He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair, a gesture so familiar it tugged at my heart despite my anger. "This has been blown out of proportion." "Has it?" I crossed my arms. "You and Mom gave me the wrong date for the Tahoe trip as a test. Then you tried to trick me into signing away my inheritance. How is that not a big deal?" "The trust amendment was about fairness," he insisted, his voice rising. "Your sisters needed more help over the years. This was just formalizing what's already been happening." "Then why not be honest?" I countered. "Why lie about selling the lake house? Why not say, 'Jordan, we've given Amber a lot of financial support, and we want to adjust the trust to reflect that.'" He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "We thought you wouldn't understand." "No, I said sharply. "You thought I wouldn't agree because it's unfair. Amber made her choices, just like I made mine. My financial independence doesn't mean I should lose my inheritance because her choices required your support." His face hardened. "This is why we did it this way. You've always been so rigid, so judgmental about your sister's choices." "That's not true," I said, my voice steady despite the hurt. "I've never criticized Amber for taking your help. I've never asked for the same or complained about the imbalance. All I've done is refuse to be lied to and manipulated." We stood in the entryway, decades of unspoken tension crackling between us. My father had always been larger than life, the patriarch whose approval I'd craved. But now I saw him for what he was, a man, flawed and human, who'd made choices that hurt me deeply. "The anniversary dinner starts at 7, he said finally, his tone softer but no less insistent. "Your mother saved seats for you and the kids. She's still hoping you will come." I shook my head. "I won't be there, Dad. Neither will Nathan and Zoe. We have plans." "Plans more important than your parents' 40th anniversary?" His voice sharpened. "Plans I'm not changing because of last-minute emotional manipulation." I corrected. "I've made my decision." "Jordan, no, Dad. this conversation is over. Please leave." For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then, with a look of disgust I'd seen too many times, he turned to the door. "You're making a mistake you'll regret," he said, hand on the knob. "Some things can't be undone." As the door closed, I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Standing up to him, sending him away without caving, was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. But as Nathan and Zoe's excited voices drifted from the kitchen, I knew it was also one of the most necessary. This wasn't just about the lake house or the trust. It was about showing my children what it meant to set boundaries, to demand respect, to stand firm against manipulation. "Mom," Nathan called, "we're ready for our picnic." "Coming, sweetie," I said, pushing my father's words aside. "Let's make today amazing." And I meant it. For the first time, I was choosing my own path, prioritizing my peace and my children's well-being over the impossible task of earning my parents' equal love. The day stretched ahead, full of promise, and I was ready to embrace it on my terms. Monday morning brought an uneasy quiet, like the calm after a storm when you're not sure if the worst is over. I'd made it through the weekend without attending the dinner, bracing for a flood of angry messages. But my phone stayed silent. No calls from my mother, no texts from my father, not even Amber's usual barrage. The silence was almost more unsettling than the conflict. "You're distracted," Emily, my assistant, observed as I stared blankly at a campaign mock-up. She knew me well enough to sense when my mind was elsewhere, even if she didn't know the full story. "Sorry," I said, refocusing. "Just some personal stuff." "Anything I can help with?" she offered. I smiled, grateful but guarded. "Not unless you can fix dysfunctional family dynamics overnight." "Ah," she nodded. "That's beyond my skill set, I'm afraid." "Mine too," I muttered, diving back into work. My job had always been my sanctuary, a place where effort and skill produced predictable results. I needed that stability now more than ever. I powered through meetings until lunchtime, when a call from Catherine Reyes's office jolted me. They wanted to schedule a follow-up, which felt ominous. "Is everything okay?" I asked the receptionist, trying to sound casual. "Ms. Reyes just wants to discuss some new information," came the vague reply. "She's available tomorrow at 11 or Wednesday at 3. I chose tomorrow, unwilling to wait an extra day for whatever new twist awaited. After hanging up, I skipped lunch, opting for a walk to clear my head. The Portland air was crisp, scented with fallen leaves and the faint promise of rain. The skyline loomed under heavy clouds, mirroring the uncertainty in my chest. What were my parents doing now? Were they plotting their next move with Amber? Or had they finally accepted my stance? My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Jordan, it's Aunt Patricia, your mother's sister. I was so sorry you couldn't make the anniversary dinner. Everyone missed you. Coffee this week?" I stared at the message, suspicion flaring. Patricia and I weren't close. She lived in Seattle and visited maybe once a year. Her sudden interest felt like another thread in my parents' web, a subtle attempt to reel me back in. I didn't respond, but the text lingered in my mind, a reminder of how far their reach extended. As I walked, I thought about Nathan and Zoe, their laughter from the morning's picnic planning, their trust in me to navigate this storm. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the example I set for them, the values I wanted them to carry. I wouldn't let my parents' manipulation define our family's future. Whatever Catherine had to share tomorrow, I'd face it head on, just as I had the dinner, the trust, and my father's unannounced visit. For the first time, I felt not just resolve, but a quiet strength, a certainty that I was finally choosing myself and my children over a past I couldn't change. The morning had started with a deceptive calm, the kind that fools you into thinking the day might unfold smoothly. But as I sat at my desk, sipping coffee and skimming emails, a message from Aunt Patricia pinged into my inbox. Her words were warm, inviting me to catch up over coffee while she was in town for a family celebration. On the surface, it was a kind gesture, but my chest tightened as I read it. Our interactions had always been cordial but shallow, like a polite dance with no real connection. This sudden outreach felt calculated, a soft jab and a larger strategy to pull me back into the family's orbit. I could almost hear my parents' voices behind her words, orchestrating this move to nudge me toward reconciliation without directly confronting the rift that had grown between us. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, my mind racing with the weight of it all. The family dynamic had been fractured for years, but the recent discovery of their attempt to alter the trust, my inheritance, my children's legacy, had turned a crack into a chasm. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed a response, careful to keep it courteous but unyielding. "Hi, Aunt Patricia," I wrote. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm buried under work and parenting responsibilities right now, so I'm not able to meet up, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I hope you had a wonderful time at the celebration." I hit send, hoping that would be the end of it, but her reply came almost instantly, like she'd been waiting by her phone. "I understand, dear, but family is so important, especially in tough times. I'm here until Thursday and can make myself available whenever works for you, even just a quick coffee." The persistence grated on me, confirming my suspicion that this wasn't just a friendly check-in. My parents had likely enlisted her, painting me as the stubborn daughter who needed coaxing back into the fold. I could picture them at their polished dining table, strategizing, their voices low and urgent, framing me as the problem to be solved. I typed back, my tone still polite but firmer. "I'm afraid this visit won't work for me. Perhaps next time you're in Portland." I closed my laptop and slipped my phone into my pocket, the brief peace of my morning walk to the office now shattered by this reminder of the unresolved tension with my family. As I stepped back into the rhythm of my workday, the unease lingered, a quiet hum beneath my focus. By late afternoon, the hum had grown into a roar. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from two cousins and my father's old college friend, people I rarely heard from, now suddenly overflowing with concern for my well-being. Each invitation to meet felt like another thread in a tightly woven net, a coordinated effort to reel me in. My responses grew shorter with each exchange, my patience fraying as I declined their offers. The audacity of it all, their assumption that I wouldn't see through the orchestrated campaign, stung more than the invitations themselves. Just before 5, my phone rang again, and I nearly ignored it, assuming it was another family member with a scripted plea. But Taylor's name flashed on the screen, and relief washed over me. Her voice was a lifeline, a tether to sanity in this storm. "Please tell me you're calling to suggest wine and takeout tonight," I said, only half joking, my voice betraying the exhaustion I felt. "Better," she replied, her tone serious but warm. "I'm calling to warn you, your sister just pulled into your driveway. I was driving by on my way home from the store and recognized her car. She's not alone. There's an older woman in the passenger seat. Couldn't quite make out who." My stomach plummeted. "My mother," I said, the certainty heavy in my chest. This was her signature move, an unannounced ambush when subtler tactics failed. I thanked Taylor, promising I owed her one, though she brushed it off with her usual fierce loyalty. "Just stay strong," she said. "Call me after if you need to vent." I hung up and immediately dialed Lily, Taylor's 16-year-old daughter, who often babysat for me. My voice was calm but urgent as I asked if she could pick up Nathan and Zoe from after-school care and stay with them for a couple of hours. I couldn't bear the thought of my kids witnessing whatever confrontation my mother and sister had planned. Lily, bless her, was available and cheerful about helping. I quickly called the school to authorize the pickup change, then texted Taylor to confirm the kids would be safe with Lily. With that handled, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. If they wanted to surprise me at home, they'd find an empty house. If they came to my office, I'd be ready. I cleared my desk, closed irrelevant browser tabs, and opened an email to Catherine Reyes, my attorney, typing a quick update about the escalating family outreach. The clock ticked past 5, and I began to wonder if Taylor had been mistaken or if my mother and sister had reconsidered their plan. But at 5:45, just as I was packing up to leave, Emily, my assistant, knocked on my door. "Jordan, your sister and mother are here to see you. They don't have an appointment, but they're insisting it's important." My heart thudded, but I nodded. "Thank you, Emily. Please show them in." She hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Are you sure? I can say you've already left if you'd rather." Her protectiveness warmed me, but I shook my head. "It's fine. Better to deal with this here than have them show up at my house." Emily nodded and returned moments later with my mother and sister in tow. They entered like actors stepping onto a stage, each playing their part. My mother, poised and elegant even in her distress, moved toward me with arms outstretched as if expecting a warm embrace. Amber, tense and ready for a fight, trailed behind, her eyes sharp with defiance. I stayed seated behind my desk, a physical barrier between us. "Mom, Amber," I said, my voice steady but cool. "This is unexpected." My mother's arms fell awkwardly to her sides, her smile faltering. "We wouldn't have had to surprise you if you'd answer your phone," she said, her tone laced with reproach. "I've been busy," I replied simply, and I made my position clear in my email. "I need space right now." Amber scoffed, crossing her arms. "Space? Right. That's why you've hired a lawyer and are telling everyone in the family that Mom and Dad tried to steal your inheritance." I met her gaze evenly. "I haven't said anything like that to anyone. But yes, I consulted an attorney after discovering the trust amendment wasn't what Mom claimed it was." My mother settled into a chair across from me, uninvited, her posture still impeccable. "It was a simple misunderstanding," she insisted, her voice smooth but strained. "I may have oversimplified when I first mentioned it, but I didn't mean to mislead you." I leaned forward slightly, my hands clasped on the desk. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You told me you wanted to sell the lake house when the document was actually about transferring my share to Amber. That's not miscommunication. It's deliberate." Amber's eyes flashed. "You're being so melodramatic. It's not like you even care about the lake house. When was the last time you went there? I take my kids every summer." "Whether I visit often or not isn't the issue," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's part of my inheritance, my children's legacy. More importantly, the way this was handled shows a complete lack of respect for me." My mother's expression softened, slipping into the familiar, sympathetic look she used when she thought I was being unreasonable but wanted to seem understanding. "Sweetheart, we respect you so much. We're so proud of how independent you have always been, how you've built your life without needing our help. Unlike some people," I couldn't help adding, glancing at Amber. Her face reddened. "See, this is your problem, Jordan. You think you're better than me because you've never asked for help, because you're so perfect and self-sufficient. Well, life isn't a competition." "You're right," I said, surprising her with my agreement. "It's not, which is why I've never complained about the financial support you've received over the years. I've never thought less of you for needing it." My mother seized the moment, her voice earnest. "Exactly. You've always understood that families support each other in different ways. Your father and I have helped Amber financially because that's what she needed. You've never needed that kind of help. And now you want to formalize that imbalance by giving her my share of the lake house," I said, cutting through her reasoning. "Why not be honest from the start? Why invent a story about selling the property?" My mother's composure faltered, her fingers twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed since childhood whenever she was caught in a lie. "We weren't sure how you'd react," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "Because you knew it was wrong," I said softly. "You knew it wouldn't seem fair, so instead of having an honest conversation, you tried to trick me into signing away my rights." "No one was trying to trick you," Amber snapped, but her words lacked conviction. "Really?" I pressed. "Then why did Mom show up unannounced at my house, claim you had buyers lined up for the lake house, and pressure me to sign documents immediately? Documents that had nothing to do with selling the property." Silence hung heavy in the room. My mother fidgeted, avoiding my gaze. Amber's defiance wavered, her arms still crossed, but her shoulders slumping slightly. I continued, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I understand why you're here. The anniversary dinner is over. I didn't attend, despite the pressure. Now you're worried about what happens next, about how this affects the family's image, about what people will say if the rift becomes public." "That's not," my mother started, but I raised a hand. "Please let me finish. This isn't just about the lake house anymore. It's about a pattern that's defined our family for years. Amber's needs are prioritized. My feelings, my rights, are secondary. I'm expected to understand, to accommodate, while she's entitled to demand and receive." "That's absurd," my mother protested. "We've always loved you both equally." I looked at her, sadness settling over me like a heavy blanket. "No, Mom, you haven't. And what hurts most isn't even the favoritism. It's the denial. It's being told that what I've experienced my entire life isn't real, that I'm imagining it or exaggerating it. Amber opened her mouth to speak, but I pressed on. The Tahoe incident made it impossible to ignore. You deliberately excluded me, tested me, then attacked me when I reacted to being manipulated. And now the trust amendment shows just how far you are willing to go to maintain this imbalance. My mother's expression hardened. So that's it? You're cutting us off over one mishandled vacation and some paperwork you didn't even sign? I'm not cutting anyone off, I clarified. I'm setting boundaries. I'm refusing to participate in dynamics that have hurt me for decades. I'm prioritizing my well-being and my children's well-being over maintaining a facade of family harmony. And what about our well-being? Amber demanded, her voice sharp. Have you thought about what this is doing to mom and dad? Dad's blood pressure is not my responsibility, I said firmly. I'm sorry if he's struggling, but I didn't create this situation. All of this could have been avoided with honesty and respect for me as an equal member of this family. My mother stood abruptly, clutching her purse with trembling hands. I can see this conversation isn't going anywhere productive. You have clearly made up your mind to paint yourself as the victim. I'm not a victim, Mom, I said, my voice calm but resolute. Not anymore. That's the whole point. Amber rose too, her face flushed with anger. So what now? You just stop being part of the family because you're mad about the lake house? I'm taking space to figure out what kind of relationship is healthy for me, I said. I've asked that communications about the trust go through my attorney, and I'd appreciate it if you'd respect my request for distance while I process everything. Your father will be devastated, my mother said, her final attempt to wield guilt. After everything he's done for you. I met her gaze steadily. I love Dad. I love both of you. But love shouldn't require me to accept manipulation and dishonesty. They left without another word, the silence in their wake both heavy and strangely freeing. I sat motionless for several minutes, the weight of the confrontation settling over me. For the first time in my life, I had faced the family dynamic head-on, refusing to back down or accept the gaslighting. It was terrifying, necessary, and somehow right. I gathered my things and headed home, where Lily had dinner nearly ready and Nathan and Zoe were happily doing homework at the kitchen table. The normalcy of the scene, the clatter of plates, the kids' chatter about school, grounded me after the emotional storm. Everything okay? Lily asked quietly as I paid her. Getting there, I said, managing a smile that felt more genuine than I'd expected. Thanks for helping on short notice. After she left, I sat with the kids over chicken pasta, listening to their stories about friends and school projects, marveling at their resilience. They were untouched by the family drama, and I was determined to keep it that way. Later, after bedtime stories and tucking them in, I poured a glass of wine and called Taylor, recounting the confrontation. So basically, they showed up to justify their actions without admitting they did anything wrong, she summarized, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Pretty much, I said, sinking into the couch. It's the classic non-apology. We respect you, which is why we tried to trick you out of your inheritance. Taylor laughed, a sharp, knowing sound. The mental gymnastics are Olympic level. But seriously, Jordan, they don't see anything wrong with what they did. In their minds, favoring Amber is just how things are supposed to be. I stared into my wine glass, her words sinking in. That's what gets me. They can't understand why I'm upset because admitting it would mean confronting their own behavior. It's easier to make you the problem than to admit they've treated you unfairly for years, Taylor said. She was right. It was about control, about maintaining the hierarchy where Amber's needs came first, and I was expected to comply without complaint. So what now? She asked. I hold my ground, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I wait to see what Catherine says tomorrow, and I focus on my kids, my work, and the relationships that actually support me. Sounds like a plan, Taylor said. And Jordan, I'm really proud of you. Standing up to family is brutal. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room reflecting on the past few weeks. The shock of the Tahoe exclusion, the betrayal of the trust amendment, the confrontation today. Each moment had been painful but clarifying. I hadn't chosen this conflict, but I was choosing how to respond, with boundaries, with dignity, with a resolve to break the cycles that had shaped my childhood. The next morning, I dressed carefully for my meeting with Catherine Reyes, choosing a tailored blazer and slim-fit trousers that made me feel polished and strong. Her office was as I remembered, orderly, professional, with walls lined with legal texts and framed credentials. She greeted me with a warm handshake and gestured to a comfortable chair. "Thanks for coming in on short notice," she began, settling behind her desk. "Some developments over the weekend warranted an in-person discussion." "That sounds ominous," I said, trying to keep my tone light despite the knot in my stomach. "Not necessarily ominous, but significant," she replied, opening a folder. "I received a call from your parents' new attorney, Gregory Parsons. They've replaced Mr. Winters." I blinked, surprised. My parents had worked with Mr. Winters for decades. "That's unexpected." "It is," Catherine agreed. "Mr. Parsons informed me that your parents are prepared to withdraw the trust amendment, returning to the original terms where you and Amber are equal beneficiaries of all family assets, including the lake house." Relief flooded me, but I braced myself. "That's good news, right?" "It would be," she said, her tone cautious. "Except there's a condition. They're requesting you sign a non-disclosure agreement prohibiting you from discussing the trust, their financial support of Amber, or any perceived disparities in how family resources have been allocated." I stared at her, the words sinking in. "They want to legally silence me about the favoritism." "Essentially," Catherine said, "the NDA is comprehensive. It would prevent you from discussing these matters with anyone outside the immediate family, including friends, relatives, social media, and even your children once they're older." The audacity of it hit me like a slap. They weren't just trying to control the narrative. They wanted to erase it entirely, to bury the truth under a legal gag order. I leaned back, my mind racing. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about ensuring their version of the family story remained unchallenged, even at the cost of my voice. The weight of adulthood pressed heavily on me, a concept both absurd and painfully revealing. Catherine, my attorney, gave a slow nod, her eyes reflecting a shared understanding of the situation's complexity. "Their approach screams reputation management," she said, her voice steady but laced with empathy. "It's less about resolving the core issues you've raised and more about keeping up appearances." My mother's frantic phone call the previous day echoed in my mind, her voice trembling, not with regret, but with fear of what others might whisper if the cracks in our family became public knowledge. The idea that our private rift could tarnish their polished image consumed her. Catherine leaned forward, her tone professional yet warm. "Mr. Parsons, their attorney, made it clear that your parents' prominence in certain social and business circles drives their caution. A public family dispute could damage their standing." A bitter laugh escaped me, devoid of humor, sharp with disbelief. "So they're ready to return what's legally mine," I said, my voice tight. "But only if I swear never to reveal how they tried to strip it from me in the first place?" The audacity of it burned, a fresh wound layered over years of quiet betrayals. Catherine nodded, her expression calm but unflinching. "That's the gist of it, yes." I sat back, my mind churning. The implications were stark, each possibility branching into new uncertainties. "What happens if I refuse their NDA?" I asked, my voice quieter now, tinged with the weight of what might come next. Catherine's response was measured. "According to Mr. Parsons, they'd challenge parts of the family trust in court. It could drag on for years, even though the trust itself is legally ironclad. But you know how litigation works. It's not always about who's right. It's about who can afford to keep fighting." The threat was unmistakable. A polished blade dressed in legal jargon, sign the agreement, or face a war of attrition in court. It was manipulation cloaked in new terms, but the same old dynamic, pressure wielded to bend me to their will. My chest tightened, a familiar ache of being cornered, yet again, by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "What would you advise?" I asked, leaning on Catherine's steady judgment. She paused, her gaze thoughtful, choosing her words with care. "Legally, their retreat from the trust amendment puts you back where you belong, where you always should have been. The NDA, though, is troubling in its scope. It's not uncommon in family financial disputes, but given what you've shared about your family, It feels like another attempt to control your story, to silence the truths you're trying to confront. Her words landed softly but carried weight, stirring a mix of gratitude and resolve in me. She continued, her tone shifting to something more personal. You've been clear about wanting to break free from these unhealthy patterns. Signing an NDA this broad might lock you deeper into them, forcing you to bury your truth to keep the peace. I nodded, her perspective anchoring me. Could we negotiate the terms? I asked, grasping for a middle ground. Make the NDA narrower, maybe protect specific financial details without gagging me on my personal experiences? Catherine's eyes brightened slightly. Absolutely. We could propose a limited agreement that safeguards their sensitive business details while preserving your right to speak about your life. And their legal threats? I pressed, my voice steady but laced with unease. How seriously should I take them? Catherine's expression grew pensive. Challenging a properly drafted trust, especially one validated by Mr. Winters, who wrote it, would be an uphill battle for them. He'd likely testify to its soundness, but legal fights are costly, financially and emotionally, no matter who wins. I exhaled deeply, the air heavy with the choices before me. I need time to think, I said, feeling the weight of the decision settle into my bones. Of course, Catherine replied, her tone reassuring. I told Mr. Parsons we'd discuss his proposal and respond by week's end. There's no rush to decide. As I stepped out of her office, my mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts. On one hand, my parents' retreat from their attempt to disinherit me felt like a small victory, a crack in their armor. On the other, the NDA laid bare their true priority, protecting their carefully curated reputation, not mending the rifts they'd caused or acknowledging the pain they'd inflicted. The realization stung, a fresh reminder of the distance between us. Instead of returning to the office, I drove to the waterfront park, a place where I often brought Nathan and Zoe on weekends. I craved the quiet, a space to untangle my thoughts without the clamor of work emails or deadlines. The park was serene on a Tuesday morning, with only a handful of joggers, parents pushing strollers, and an elderly couple tossing breadcrumbs to ducks by the river. I found a bench overlooking the water, the steady flow of the current calming my racing thoughts. Sitting there, I asked myself what I truly wanted. Not vengeance, though the hurt they'd caused, my parents and Amber, ran deep. Not wealth beyond what was rightfully mine. Not even public validation, though their fear of exposure suggested that's what haunted them most. What I longed for was acknowledgement, a recognition that the favoritism I'd endured was real, that their manipulations were deliberate, that my feelings and boundaries deserve respect. I wanted a shift in the toxic dynamics that had defined our family for decades, not just a legal fix to a financial dispute. The NDA, I realized, was the antithesis of that. It demanded I trade my truth for their comfort, enshrining silence as the price of peace. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from an unfamiliar number. Jordan, this is Lucas Mitchell again. I've heard about the NDA proposal. I'm in Portland, one more day if you'd like to talk. No pressure. Lucas, a family acquaintance and business associate of my father's, had reached out before, offering perspective during earlier tensions. His reappearance now surprised me. How had he learned about the NDA? Was my father confiding in him, or was Portland's elite circle just that tightly knit? I typed a quick reply. Thank you, Lucas. I'd value your perspective. Same cafe, 4 p.m. His response was immediate. I'll be there. The day blurred through work obligations, my mind only half present as I navigated client calls and meetings. By 4 o'clock, I was at Riverside Bakery, sliding into a chair across from Lucas. He pushed a coffee toward me, black with 1 sugar, exactly as I liked it. I remembered from last time, he said, catching my surprised glance. Good memory, I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, grateful for the small gesture amid the chaos. Lucas studied me, his eyes kind but searching. You look exhausted, Jordan. This is weighing on you. I gave a faint smile. Is it that obvious? Only to someone paying attention, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. So, an NDA? That's their solution? I nodded, the frustration bubbling up again. You seem well informed. Did my father tell you? No, he said, leaning back. A colleague who knows Gregory Parsons mentioned it. Portland's legal world is smaller than you'd think. He leaned forward, his voice gentle but direct. What do you make of their proposal? I exhaled, the words spilling out. I'm torn. They're backing off the trust amendment, which feels like a win. But the NDA, it's just another way to control me, to buy my silence instead of facing the real issues. Lucas nodded, his expression thoughtful. That fits what I know of your father. Richard's always cared more about how things look than how they are. You've known him a long time, I said, curious. Did you ever notice how differently he treated Amber and me? Lucas hesitated, his gaze distant as he chose his words. I saw patterns, moments where rules bent for Amber, but held firm for you. Times when your accomplishments were noted in passing, while hers were paraded. It wasn't blatant, but it was there. His observation coming from someone outside the family felt like a balm to a wound I'd carried for years. Why do you think he does it? I asked, my voice softer now, almost afraid of the answer. Lucas's expression grew pensive. I think it's more about Richard than either of you. Amber mirrors him, charismatic, impulsive, comfortable, leaning on others. You reflect the person he wishes he could be, independent, responsible, strong. Your self-sufficiency unsettles him, highlights his own insecurities. Amber's reliance makes him feel powerful, needed. His words hit like a revelation, reframing decades of hurt. My father's favoritism wasn't about loving Amber more, but about wrestling with his own flaws. That makes sense, I said slowly, but it doesn't make it hurt less. No, Lucas agreed, his tone firm. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't erase the damage, and it doesn't mean you have to keep accepting it. He paused, then added, about the NDA, I can't tell you what to do, but silencing someone rarely heals anything. It just buries the problem. His words lingered as I drove home, weaving through the familiar routine of dinner, homework, and bedtime with Nathan and Zoe. As I tucked them in, their small faces peaceful in sleep, I felt a quiet resolve forming. At the kitchen table, I opened my laptop and wrote to Catherine. Dear Catherine, after much thought, I can't accept the NDA as it stands. Its demand for silence feels like an extension of the same toxic patterns I'm trying to escape. I'm open to a narrower agreement that protects specific financial details, but doesn't muzzle my personal experiences. I hope this counter-proposal shows whether their concern is truly about privacy or just controlling the narrative. Please advise on next steps. Sincerely, Jordan Bennett. Sending the email brought a strange relief, like shedding a heavy coat. I'd held my ground, refusing to trade my voice for what was mine. Whatever came next, acceptance or rejection, I was ready to face it without compromising my truth. Lucas's final text that night echoed my thoughts. Whatever you decide, Jordan, remember, some inheritances matter more than money. Breaking toxic cycles might be the greatest legacy you leave your kids. Smiling at the alignment with my own reflections, I felt a quiet strength. This wasn't just about my parents or the trust. It was about the example I'd set for my children. About choosing authenticity over silence. 3 days passed with no reply to my counter-proposal. Catherine assured me this was normal. Attorneys often needed time to consult. Still, I checked my email compulsively, wondering if my parents were considering my terms or plotting their next move. On the 4th day, while sifting through work briefs, Catherine called. I've heard from Mr. Parsons, she said, her voice neutral. Your parents have rejected your modified NDA. They're sticking to their original terms, full confidentiality for withdrawing the trust amendment. They say it's their final offer, and they're prepared to litigate if you don't agree. The words stung, though I'd braced for them. So they'd rather burn money on lawyers than let me speak my truth, I said, my voice low but steady. It seems so, Catherine replied. Financially, litigation makes little sense for them. The trust is solid, and they'd face steep costs with no guaranteed win. This feels personal, not practical. It's about control, I said, Lucas's insight ringing true. It always has been. Catherine paused, then asked, how do you want to proceed, Jordan? No? I'd wrestled with this question for days, balancing what I was willing to fight for against the toll it would take. I won't sign their NDA, I said, my resolve hardening. Not like this. If they want to go to court, I'll defend myself, but first I want to try reaching them directly, not as a legal opponent, but as their daughter. Catherine cautioned me about the risks of direct communication, noting that anything I said could be used against me. I understood, but felt compelled to trim my to speak from the heart before we descended into legal warfare. That night, after the kids were asleep, I wrote the hardest email of my life. Mom and Dad, before our lawyers pull us further apart, I'm writing as your daughter, not about trusts or NDAs, but about what this fight really means. The lake house is just a symbol. The real issue is a lifetime of feeling less valued, less heard. It's about learning you were willing to deceive me, to take what was mine, and refusing to acknowledge those choices. I'm not asking for more than what's fair. I'm asking for honesty, for recognition that my experiences matter. Your NDA tells me you care more about appearances than healing. Silence doesn't mend wounds, it buries them. I can't teach my kids that belonging means sacrificing their truth. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it must start with honesty and respect, not control. With love, despite everything. Jordan. I sent it before doubt could stop me, my heart pounding, but my conscience clear. The next morning, my father's reply arrived. Jordan, your mother and I have read your email. We disagree with your view of our family and recent events, but we see that continued legal conflict serves no one. We are withdrawing both the trust amendment and the NDA. The words felt like a release, a crack of light in a long dark tunnel. They hadn't apologized or acknowledged my pain, but they'd stepped back from the brink. For now, it was enough, not a resolution, but a pause, a chance to breathe and decide what came next. I'd held my ground, not just for myself, but for the legacy of truth I wanted for Nathan and Zoe. Whatever followed, I'd face it with the courage to keep speaking, to keep building something better. I stared at the email from my father, Richard Bennett, the words on the screen burning into my vision as I read them again and again. The message was curt, formal, devoid of the warmth I'd once dreamed of in a moment of reconciliation. It wasn't an apology, nor did it acknowledge the years of hurt or the validity of my concerns. There was no admission of the deception that had unraveled our family's fragile trust. Yet, it also lacked the legal threats, the attempts to muzzle my voice, or the manipulative clauses that had once loomed over me like a storm cloud. The original trust terms would stand, with Amber and me as equal beneficiaries of the family's assets. The decision was final, non-negotiable, and they asked only for discretion in public discussions, not as a legal demand, but as a courtesy. They also suggested a period of limited contact, citing the stress this ordeal had caused, particularly for my mother, whose health had frayed under the weight of it all. My heart sank as I absorbed the words, a mix of relief and resignation settling in my chest. This wasn't the heartfelt resolution I'd once imagined, where my parents would suddenly see me, truly see me, for who I was and what I'd endured. Decades of their rigid family dynamic, favoring Amber, dismissing my voice, prioritizing control over connection, had calcified into something unyielding. They weren't going to transform into the empathetic, equitable parents I'd longed for. But they were stepping back from their attempt to cut me out of the inheritance. And that, I realized, was the most I could hope for. It was a victory, but a hollow one, leaving me with the lingering ache of what I truly wanted. Not assets or legal rights, but recognition, a sense of belonging, a place in their hearts equal to Amber's. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Catherine, my fingers trembling slightly as I hit send. Within an hour, her response arrived, crisp and professional, yet warm with encouragement. Dear Jordan, this is a significant step forward and, from a legal standpoint, a positive outcome. Your father has effectively conceded to your primary demand, ensuring your rightful place in the family trust without any restrictions on your freedom of speech. The request for discretion carries no legal weight, nor does the suggestion of limited contact. These are personal boundaries they're attempting to set, not enforceable conditions. I recommend sending a brief, formal acknowledgement of this message to confirm your understanding that the original trust terms remain unchanged. Beyond that, any decisions about family communication or contact are entirely yours, guided by what feels healthiest for you and your children. I want to commend you for your resilience. Standing firm in the face of potential litigation and familial pressure is no small feat. Many in similar situations struggle to maintain their boundaries, but you've done so with remarkable courage. Best regards, Catherine Reyes Escurman. Following Catherine's advice, I drafted a concise reply to my father, acknowledging the email and confirming the trust's unchanged terms. As I hit send, I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the legal battle lifting slightly, though a deeper heaviness remained. The lake house, my children's inheritance, my place in the family's legacy, they were secure. The attempt to silence me had crumbled. On paper, I'd won, but the victory felt like a shadow of what I truly sought. I didn't want property or legal triumphs. I wanted my parents to see me, to value my experiences, to acknowledge that my feelings mattered just as much as Amber's. That longing, I feared, would remain unfulfilled, perhaps forever. Over the next few weeks, my parents honored their request for limited contact. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits to my doorstep. Amber, too, stayed silent, though her social media posts occasionally flickered across my screen, carefully curated snapshots of her children at soccer games or ballet recitals, my parents often beaming in the background, their pride palpable even through the digital filter. At first, I braced for the familiar sting of exclusion, the sharp pang of seeing their favoritism laid bare. But something had shifted within me. I could look at those images and recognize the patterns, their unwavering preference for Amber, their ease in her world, without feeling diminished by them. The pain was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I was learning to observe without being wounded, to see the truth without letting it define me. One evening, as Taylor and I shared a bottle of wine on my back deck, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, she noticed the change. "You seem different," she said, her voice soft with a curiosity. "More settled, maybe?" I swirled the wine in my glass, watching my children, Nathan and Zoe, chase each other through the yard, their laughter weaving through the twilight. "I think I am," I replied, the words feeling true as I spoke them. "Not because my family has changed, they haven't, but because I've stopped fighting for something they can't give me. I've accepted it, finally." Taylor's eyes softened, her smile warm. "That's huge, Jordan. Most people spend their whole lives stuck in that fight." I nodded, thinking of the decades I'd spent trying to prove my worth, to earn the love and respect I saw so freely given to Amber. The lake house deception had been the breaking point, its blatant unfairness forcing me to confront what I'd avoided for years. "It was so obvious," I said, my voice quiet. "So undeniable. It made me see what I'd been pretending not to see." As we spoke, I watched Nathan help Zoe climb the maple tree, his small hands steady as he guided her to a higher branch. My heart swelled with a love so fierce it nearly overwhelmed me. Nathan with his quiet protectiveness, and Zoe with her fearless determination. They were my world, my reason for everything. "I've been thinking about breaking cycles," I said, my gaze still on them. "About how patterns repeat across generations, unless someone stops them. I don't want Nathan and Zoe to grow up thinking they have to earn love, or that their worth depends on someone else's approval. I want them to know they're enough, just as they are." Taylor smiled, nodding toward the kids, who were now racing across the yard, their faces alight with joy. "They already know it, Jordan. You've done good, Mama." A month later, an unexpected letter arrived. Not from my parents, but from Lucas Mitchell, a family friend whose wisdom had always carried a quiet weight. The handwritten note, penned on heavy stationery, was simple but profound. "Dear Jordan, I've been thinking of you and wanted to share a perspective from my 70 years of observing life. Families are stubborn things, resistant to change, but individuals can transform when they choose to see clearly and act with courage. You've shown that courage. By standing firm, you've broken a cycle, not just for yourself, but for your children. Your parents may never fully grasp what transpired. They may lack the capacity for that kind of reflection, but your achievement stands regardless. You've chosen truth over comfort, and that's a legacy your children will inherit, not just in material terms, but in the example you've set. If you ever need a friendly ear or the perspective of someone who's seen too many family dynamics to count, my door is always open. With respect and admiration, Lucas." I tucked the letter into my desk drawer, returning to it whenever doubt crept in or when another family holiday passed without a word from my parents. Lucas's words were a reminder that transformation didn't require their acknowledgement. It lived in the choices I made, the boundaries I held, the honest relationships I built with my children and friends like Taylor. 6 months later, a text from Amber shattered the uneasy calm that had settled over my life. "Jordan, it's Amber. Dad had a minor heart attack last night. He's stable now, but I thought you should know. Portland General, room 412. The words hit me like a wave, stirring emotions I hadn't expected. Despite the years of distance, the hurt, the unresolved conflict, he was still my father. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who helped me build a volcano for my science fair, who smiled with pride at my college graduation. Our relationship was fractured, but not erased. I arranged childcare with Taylor and drove her to the hospital, my mind a tangle of nerves and uncertainty. What would I say to my mother after months of silence? To Amber, whose curated life seemed so distant from mine? To my father, whose mortality now felt so real? In the cardiac unit waiting area, I found them. My mother, smaller and more fragile than I remembered, and Amber, tense and weary. Their surprise was evident as I approached. "Jordan," my mother said, rising unsteadily. "You came?" "Of course I came," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "He's my father." An awkward silence followed, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved pain. But beneath it, I sensed a subtle shift, a softening in the air. "How is he?" I asked, looking between them. "Stable," Amber said. "It was mild. They placed a stent, and the doctor's optimistic." My mother nodded, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "They're allowing one visitor at a time. I just came out. You can go in if you'd like." The offer caught me off guard, a small gesture of kindness I hadn't expected. "Are you sure?" I asked, hesitant. "He's your father, Jordan," my mother said softly, her voice gentler than I'd heard in years. "Of course you should see him." In the hospital room, my father lay propped up, monitors beeping steadily. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert. "Jordan," he said, surprise flickering across his features. "You're here." "Hi, Dad," I said, approaching cautiously. "How are you feeling?" "Like an elephant sat on my chest," he said with a weak smile. "But better than last night." We sat in silence, the weight of our history pressing between us. "I didn't expect you to come," he said finally, his voice rough. "After everything." "You're still my father," I replied. "That hasn't changed, even if other things have." He looked away, his gaze fixed on the heart monitor's steady rhythm. "The doctor says I need to reduce stress, make lifestyle changes, resolve unfinished business." I waited, sensing he had more to say. "Jordan, I'm not good at—" He gestured vaguely, searching for words. "I've always believed actions speak louder than words. Providing financially, creating opportunities. That's how I showed care." "I know, Dad," I said softly. "But sometimes it hasn't felt equitable or fair." He paused, the words seeming to settle heavily on him. "Perhaps I haven't always been attentive to how it appeared to you," he said slowly. "The lake house, we handled that poorly, very poorly. It wasn't a full apology, but from my father, a man who had never admitted fault in my memory, it was monumental." "Thank you for saying that," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it, even a little." He nodded, fatigue etched into his face. Later, as I spoke briefly with my mother and Amber, I felt a strange lightness. Not because all was forgiven or healed, but because I'd held my boundaries while remaining open to whatever connection might emerge. Driving home through Portland's darkening streets, I thought about the tests we face, the ones others set, the ones we create for ourselves. For me, the true test had been breaking the cycle of seeking validation, of valuing truth over comfort, of modeling self-respect for my children. Whatever came next with my family, whether healing or distance, I had passed that test, and that was enough.